Can a murderer, a warlord, or a political schemer ever be called a saint? History says yes. Some of the most revered figures in religious tradition have pasts filled with violence, vengeance, and scandal, yet somehow they were canonized, celebrated as holy. In this video, we're uncovering the most controversial saints in history, the ones whose paths to sainthood were anything but pure. Saint Augustine, or Augustine of Hippo as he is better known, is perhaps the most famous saint with a sinful past, which is rather surprising since his own mother, St. Monica, was a devout Christian. He is remembered for stating, "God grant me chastity and continence, but not yet." Born at Tagaste, North Africa in AD 354, Augustine was perhaps the greatest Christian ancient philosopher. Raised a devout Christian, he rejected his upbringing to live a life of hedonism, entertainment, and worldly ambition. The playboy had not one, but two mistresses and an illegitimate son whom he abandoned at the prospect of marrying an heiress. He ran around for decades before having a change of heart, ditching his mistresses and spending the rest of his life celibate as a priest who related his story in a volume titled Confessions while teaching and spreading the Christian message. Augustine's theology would become one of the main pillars on which the church of the next 1,000 years was founded. Perhaps the most controversial historical saint, few among his contemporaries could have predicted that this Archbishop of Canterbury and advisor to King Henry II was destined for sainthood. The son of a prosperous London merchant, Becket's talents were noticed by Henry II, who made him his chancellor, and the two became close friends. When the current Archbishop Theobald died in 1161, Henry appointed Becket to the post just over a year later. Assuming his friend would be easily manipulated, he wasn't, and the pair's friendship soon fractured when it became clear that Becket was on the side of the church in disagreements with the crown. In 1164, after realizing the extent of Henry's displeasure, Becket fled into exile in France and remained there until 1170. Upon his return, he excommunicated bishops who had diplomatically supported Henry in his pursuit to dislodge clerical privilege. This infuriated the king, leading to the disaster that ensued on 29th of December 1170. 4 knights, believing Henry wanted Becket eliminated, murdered the archbishop, splattering his blood and brains across the northwest transept floor of Canterbury Cathedral and making him an instant martyr. From England and France, people flocked to his shrine, while a cult associated with the curative power of Becket's blood began at Canterbury. The first recorded miraculous cure occurred in January 1171, with a proliferation recorded thereafter. Canterbury became one of the most popular pilgrimage destinations in Europe, and his murder one of the most infamous events of the Middle Ages. Becket was canonized not even 3 years after his death by Pope Alexander III on Ash Wednesday, 21st February 1173 at Segni, Italy. St. Angela of Foligno was recently declared a saint through the procedure of equivocal canonization by Pope Francis in 2013. But while some saints show signs of holiness from an early age, Angela was somewhat different. Born in around 1248 to a leading Italian family, she became immersed in the quest for wealth and social position, even though she was a wife of high social standing and mother to several children. More interested in this life of distraction than caring for her family, around age 40, she experienced a conversion and realized the apparent emptiness of her existence. In 1285, she called upon St. Francis, who appeared to her in a vision, and asked his advice on making a competent general confession, a confessing of all sins of one's past life or of an extended period, instead of just those sins committed since a previous confession. Seeking God's help in the sacrament of penance, her Franciscan confessor helped Angela to seek his pardon for her previous actions and suggested dedicating herself to prayer and the works of charity. Sadly, just 3 years later, her mother, husband, and children all perished in quick succession. Some suggest this was at Angela's cruel hand so that she would be free of homemaking to follow God's path. She therefore sold all her worldly possessions and in 1291 enrolled in the Third Order of St. Francis, a secular Franciscan order, and founded a women's religious group to serve the poor. Most Christians know St. Dismas by a rather telling name, the Good Thief. He was allegedly one of the 2 thieves who ended up flanking Christ's side at his crucifixion. It is said that Dismas actually had a run-in with the Holy Family, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. When Jesus was only an infant, together with an accomplice, he held up Mary and Joseph as they were fleeing to Egypt to escape Herod's soldiers. Apparently, Dismas is said to have been moved to compassion by the Holy Family and bribed his companion with 40 drachmas to let them pass safely without harm. The infant Jesus predicted that the thieves would be crucified with him in Jerusalem and that Dismas would then accompany him to paradise. When crucified with Jesus, he asked Christ, "Remember me when you come into your kingdom." Therefore, when Dismas acknowledged his sinfulness, Jesus forgave him and promised that he would be in paradise that very day. Of course, this story cannot be substantiated and is often considered myth. Junípero Serra, a Spanish colonist who built a network of Catholic missions in modern-day California, formerly a province of New Spain, thereby bringing Catholicism in the 18th century, was canonized a saint by Pope Francis in 2015. Serra founded the first 9 Catholic settlements from San Diego to San Francisco in the 1770s and 1780s with the hope of herding native people onto farms and baptizing them, while Pope Francis described him as a priest who protected the dignity of native communities from abusers as he developed Catholicism in the New World. Others suggest his baptized community were forced to remain in the settlements under terrible conditions such as overcrowding and the rapid spread of disease. The natives were also coerced into working on the settlements, and those who tried to escape were subjected to beatings. Serra, writing in 1780, even admitted supporting corporal punishment because other saints had endorsed it. His holy appointment therefore sparked great outrage, largely because many believed Serra unworthy, as he was connected to a system that decimated the population of Native Americans in the colonial era.